My name is Carol May Whittick, a spiritual life coach and your host of Her Conversations Tools for the Awakening. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. What is the awakening? This is the moment in time when humanity rises up out of the darkness. Who is awakening? Each one of us present on Earth today, reclaiming our sovereignty, seeking greater possibilities in our reality and looking for solutions. We know being awakened is not a lofty ideal, but a necessity. If we can transform ourselves, we can change the world. Guests on Her Conversations will speak to your spirituality, sensuality, and soul. Listen to their stories and hear how they are in service to the world. Let their words and these conversations embolden and inspire you. Please allow me to take a minute to speak about Her Inspirations, which is the sister podcast to Her Conversations. Each episode of Her Inspirations is an exploration of things we encounter as we embark on our spiritual and awakening journeys. Every Monday following the Friday release of Her Inspirations, I send out an accompanying email for each episode. So if you haven't already, do consider joining the mailing list, and in that email you'll receive additional meditation, journaling and inspiration notes. If there's links to any additional resources, I'll send them there and also share with you any exclusives. Use the link in the show notes to join up. You'll also receive the free Embody Higher Energetic Resonance course, where you feel into your vision physically, emotionally and spiritually, and boldly take action on your dreams. My guest this week is Marla Mervis-Hartmann. She's the creator of Love Your Body, Love Yourself. Marla is also a dynamic speaker who was featured at TEDx Salinas. She's author of Befriend Yourself and a coach. She has an expertise in Reiki, Integrative Somatic Trauma Therapy, Tantra, and she empowers women to break free from dieting and embrace self-love. During our conversation, Marla shares about overcoming her own struggles with food and lack of body confidence to now creating the services that she uses to help women discover, honour and appreciate their bodies. So as always, I begin by asking my guests, Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel that higher energetic resonance?
I definitely feel that when I am with my clients and I'm in the zone with them. I feel that I'm connecting to the wisdom that they need to hear, that there's like this stream of consciousness that's coming through me. I definitely feel that in my Reiki work, right? I feel so lit up by this energy that is me and is universal and is love. And of course, when I'm with my family, I feel that when I'm just in that really, that love vibration. And, but it's also so embodied, that her, which it's interesting because I call it my she. I call that feeling my she. I'm like, oh, I'm in my she. I feel so connected to God, to the earth. And I just feel myself so open. So my she, my her.
Perfect. Yeah. the perfect pronouns. And before we move on, Marla, can you just introduce yourself to everyone who's listening, a little bit about yourself, your journey, how you got to the point of doing the work that it is that you're doing today?
Yeah, well, it's a long story, but we'll make it succinct. My name is Marla. I am the creator of Love Your Body, Love Yourself, and I'm a Reiki master and a TEDx speaker and a coach and a mother. And I came to work with primarily women because the epidemic of negative body image and food challenges really do feel like they're focused around women. And I came to support women to heal their relationship with their body and food because of my own journey of being super mean to myself, super unkind, really expecting myself to be perfect, expecting my body to be a certain way, expecting my food to be a certain way, having a lot of control. And I think this stemmed from younger years where, you know, I had a lot of attention on my body, and that experience made me feel like that my body was my worth. And if my body changed, then I may not be loved.
Mm.
And, you know, I was born into a very strong, healthy, you know, thin body, but it never was enough. And I found that the way that I ended up coping with life situations, with emotions, and we all have coping mechanisms, right? So we all have that thing that we go to. So we don't want to pretend like we're not human. Like I was human, and and what I leaned into was dieting. I leaned into overeating, binging, controlling. Something would come up, and say anything, right? Stress, anxiety, an argument or something uncomfortable with a friend, those feelings I didn't know what to do with. So I would either eat over it. I would stuff down all my anger, right? Oh gosh, I'm so good at stuffing that down. Be the good girl, push that fear, push that anger down, right? So the way of controlling was controlling my food, controlling my weight. And I really thought for so many years that if I had my food clear and controlled, and if I was a certain weight, then my life was going to be better. Because that was my challenge, right? That was the challenge for me. And of course, I had a life of, a lot of beautiful family and friends and community. Of course, everyone has their challenges, but that I thought was it. So when I finally hit rock bottom, probably for the 19th time, but this one time I hit bottom because I had found that weight. I'd hit that number. My food was in control. And when I stepped on that scale and saw that number, I was like, whoa, I feel like crap. I'm so outside of myself. Everything feels like it's crumbling all around me. And yet here's the number and here's this control. And it was then that I realized, okay, this has nothing to do with my weight. This has nothing to do with food. This is a deeper issue. And that's when I really went into, honestly, a pretty long journey of healing, a long journey of recovery. This is when I found Reiki early on. And Reiki, for those who don't know, is a healing modality. Maybe we can go into this a little bit more, but this is a healing modality that really connects deeply to unconditional love. And so I found Reiki. I healed my relationship with sexuality. And I realized just how negative and mean I was to myself. And so, I was into therapy. I was in the support groups. I was doing the breath work. I was doing the healing. I was going in, right? And I was learning practical tools to love my body. I was learning ways to be with my food and find that peace. And, it's still an ongoing journey. Like having a relationship with your body and a relationship with food, it never stops. It never ends. Right. So there's always fine tuning. There's always ways for me to be kinder with my body and kinder with my food. And as I age, it changes, right? It's a different type of relationship. So when I can remember when I was pregnant, almost, I think I was 9 months pregnant, and it just hit me. I'm like, I'm good. I feel free. And it was in a moment where I'm like, this is my purpose. All the things that I've learned, to heal myself, and all the modalities and everything that I've learned, all the yoga trainings that I've done, all the breath, all the Reiki, all the inner stuff, all the trauma therapy trainings I've learned has all been about healing my relationship with my body. And I'm like, I can now help others. And it was so huge. It was like that lightning. It was my she. It was my her. It was that lightning bolt of like, I'm ready. And so from that point on, I just started sharing and opening up and talking so much more about my journey. I'm pretty much an open book when it comes to the things that I've experienced. And, because I feel it's so important for women to not feel alone in this. So many women are feeling so alone, and it's like, we're all feeling this way. Yeah. Right. And Yeah, so I'm going to stop there before I keep going on my rant, but that's how I got to where I am now.
Great. Yeah. No rant at all. And it's I like what you say about women feeling that they're all alone in it, and it's like everyone's alone in their like united suffering. You know, it always feels like you're the only one, you're the only person, and has been up until a point, and then we start to realize that we have more in common than we do aside as well. We're all going through the same things. We're all trying to figure it out. And especially in, well, let me say what I'm seeing, especially in this world of women getting to their, like, I'm 51 now, so being of that age and just seeing that it looks very different from what I thought 51 would be, but also looking back historically, and even because I very much like watching kind of old TV things, you know, like TV programs from the 70s and 60s as well, because they had this kind of charm to them. But one of the things I've always noticed is when they're talking about people in their 50s, and there was this one little TV play that I was watching recently of someone who had turned 50, and he would be someone that we would recognize as probably a 70-year-old man today in terms of looks and body and everything like that. And everyone around him who was 50, we would say, well, that kind of looks like a 70-year-old, what we expect a 70-year-old woman to look like, you know, a well-kept 70-year-old woman. So it's like something has changed within us anyway, even though we may not still have everything all together, or we're still kind of figuring it out, in that we don't age at the same rate that we used to do before. So there's this kind of expected longevity in terms of keeping ourselves together. Well, I mean, what are you seeing around that as well? It's like something that I've noticed. It's like just seeing that now what 50 and 60 looks like is 20 years younger than what it looked like 20 years ago, if that makes sense.
Right. Yes, it totally makes sense. Well, it's interesting. It's very timely. I'm going to be turning 50 in 5 days.
Yeah.
So I'm in that experience.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'm so excited about it. I feel just so thrilled to be, you know, turning 50 and being in this new decade. Right. And I think you're right. I think there's, in some ways, that can add a lot of pressure to people, right? Because some people are following that path where there is a lot more longevity, and there is that feeling of, you know, people are younger. And I think it's also like social media presenting a certain way and Hollywood presenting a certain way, right? Like, I think you're right. I think we on a fundamental level, like, we have more access to health. We have more access to taking care of ourselves and self-care. So I think you're right. The 50 and the 70 from all those years ago, so true. And then there's the experience of like, oh, I'm not supposed to ever look old, right? It's like I'm seeing my skin and I'm like, oh no, this is actually happening. Like, I am aging. I don't feel like it, but when I look down, I'm like, oh my gosh, my legs are sagging, right? And they're strong and they're healthy, but it's like, it's actually happening, right? And so it's talk about body image, right? We have these different times in our life where how our relationship to our body begins to change. You know, I think about as young children in puberty, and just a little story around that. I just put up on a post on Facebook yesterday about being weighed in school, being weighed in front of the whole gym class, and how traumatic that was, and how uncomfortable that was. And so many women, I don't think I've had a post with so many people commenting, and the trauma, the experience of trauma that these women are still carrying from having to have their bodies and the numbers seen, and people talk about their bodies and being naked in gym, in the locker room and all of that, and how that experience at such a young age is still affecting people, and they're still hiding their bodies, right? So we have that experience. Then we have puberty. Then we have moving into our mother age, and those who have mothered or not mothered. There's there's still that change in our body around that time. And for those who have had a child, that is another huge opportunity to be like, whoa, my body's changing.
Right.
And it may never go back. And usually it doesn't. And then the mourning of that body, oh my gosh, I'm not that maiden. I'm not that young girl anymore. I have a mother's body, right? And that's a death in some ways, right? It's a grieving, and it often shows up in body shame, and it shows up as an attack on ourselves and our body, when it's not just about the body. It's about the whole package. It's about everything changing, and our relationship to life, and our relationship to, to partnership, and how we are creative in the world, right? And then we're moving on into perimenopause years and menopause years. And, that's where I sit. And it's like, that's a whole other experience. And for me at this stage, it's about my body looks like, but it's been more about loving my body and how it's working. And in the anger and the upset that I've had towards my body for being fatigued and not being able to go. And it's been a huge process for me, a huge learning. It's like, no, I can't push myself anymore. I could do that when I was younger and get away with it. I can't do it anymore. And my health has suffered. And it's been a huge experience, this perimenopause years of like, and that's another journey of how can I love my body? How can I be okay with the fact that I'm tired and I'm fatigued and my body's not working the way I want it to? And there's a lot of sadness in that, but it's like, how can I be with myself in that process in a loving way? I may not like it. And this is one of the things I think is really important. I'll share this tidbit here, is there's a difference between liking our bodies and loving our bodies. We put them together. So when I say love your body, love yourself, that can be the name of my business. That can be kind of triggering. It's like, I don't want to love my body. Well, let's look at that. You don't have to like what it's doing. You don't have to like what you see in the mirror. You don't have to like these things. You're allowed to have a preference. I have a preference on what my body looks like. And when it doesn't look like that, I don't really like it, right? But I still have the opportunity to show up with love. I can still respect it. I can still be kind to myself. I can still speak kindly to myself. I can still take care of myself, right? It's the same as having, if your closest partner in your life, sometimes you may not like them, right? You're like, I'm not enamored by you, don't like what you're doing, let's take some space. But you still love them. You can feel the love for them. And the more you back away, the more you love them, right? And the more you start liking them again. And it's the same thing with our body.
It's good. It's interesting you say that as well. Because I'm really notating this period of time. Just kind of this shift from the mother into the wise woman, the crone era, and also saying and grieving that. But sometimes when you say grief, the idea of it sounds so heavy, of like, oh, we've got to mourn these things, and maybe not. It doesn't necessarily have to be a mourning, like moving from one stage of life to another, especially when the back is society is so against you having any semblance of any life. This is the bit where we all kind of just fall off the cliff and like quietly disappear. It's almost like this end of conveyor belt while we're going through this, whereas now like more women are just like, well, that's not how I feel. I think in Western society, what could help that is for us to really create ritual around that, in the same way that when you were moving from girlhood to puberty, you'd go out and buy your first bra, and there'd be this thing when you got like your first period. There was all a celebration of all these things. And yet when we're kind of transitioning from that period of our life into the crone era, is then it's just like it's shameful, it's painful, it's everything but the positivity that it could be. So like I'm really watching it because I'm just like really up against the messaging of what's going on and like what should be happening in the way that I should be feeling, when I'm like, no, that's not really the journey that I want to take. One, in the same way, when I turned 50, I'm like, I can't believe this. It's like, this is wild. Like, what? I'm 50 years, you know? And when you say it in so many numbers, but it was then also to go, I made it. It's like, wow, I'm like, as far as I'm concerned, I'm halfway in. So then using that mindset is, if I think that I've got another 50 years going, and if I'm just going by genetics, which, you know, are questionable anyway, but just in the terms of the way that women in my family before me that have lived into their late 80s, 90s, and that's with poor health. That's with just allowing things to decay. That's by going into all of the ailments because of the lack of knowledge and the lack of care, and then and the lack of healing and the lack of self-love, how they still made it to a really great age. So I could technically have another 40 years, 50 years, if I kind of, take on the things that I'm taking on. So with that mindfulness of like, okay, I'm going to be in this body for another 50 years. What am I going to do today to make sure that my body doesn't become a prison for me? And then I can't move it. I have to, I don't want it to be those things. So how can I, one, be grateful that I got this far with it all together, and still kind of upright and together in a way that maybe, looking at what 50 looked like when I was 25 or something wasn't the same thing. It looked like the end of days. So for me to get here and go, I don't look like what I thought 50 would look like, and you kind of like get into that age with a bit of trepidation, because you like, even though I got to 40, I'm like, well, I don't look, like I still look all right. So what's going to happen in the next 10 years that's going to be this catastrophe so that I hit a wall at 50? And that didn't happen either. So it's like, so obviously I'm taking on something different. I'm doing something different here. How can I maintain that with gratitude, with respect, with all of those things, so that the next few decades of my life for myself are, an upward trajectory, in that I'm taking on all the wisdom of 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, and also living a life that will then not scare the generations behind to still want to try and hold on to wherever they're at, and thinking that they're old at 30 or 25 or younger than that, where these girls are having these procedures, and you want to reach out to them. And it must be tough, I think, for them to, it seems tougher. I don't know what you think. Like, do you have a daughter?
No, I don't. I have a son. I have a 10-year-old son.
Yeah.
Okay, so many things you said I want to comment on, but I really get the wise woman, right? And the celebration of that. And I do feel like that is coming in as a surge. One of my best friends is writing a book about the wise woman and celebrating this, right? And there's so many women who are like, I don't want to feel so uncomfortable in my body. I want to feel alive, and I want to celebrate this time. And, for me, I'm just noticing there's so many more pieces of me that have come together as I've aged. The parts of me that are not questioning myself anymore, who are speaking out, things that I wouldn't be able to say before, just coming out of my mouth with such like ease. I'm like, oh, I guess I just said that. Right. There's so many these moments of the her that's embodied, right? And the celebration of that, right? So it's not necessarily, when I was mentioning the grief, it's about being able to say, okay, Marla, that's not, like, sometimes I'll look at these younger girls and I'll feel like I'm them. I'm like, that's not you. You're not that age. My mom will say that. She's in her 70s, and she'll be like, I just can't even believe, I look in the mirror, I can't believe that's who I am. I do not feel like I'm an old woman. I'm in my 70s. It's so funny because she's like a firecracker, right? She's just like, she's lit up. She has more energy than I do, right? And it's just funny to hear that. It's that same sort of experience, but it's like, what I'm finding is like there's this brainwashing that we've had that we're questioning at this point, and we get to question.
Yeah.
Where it's like, no, I'm not in pain because I'm getting older. I have pain and aches in my body because I haven't been using my body correctly for a long time. That happens to be because I'm older, or it's just because I've been in this body for a long time. So I feel like for me, it's like I feel like I get the opportunity now that I am slowing down to be the healthiest I've ever been. To fine tune the ways that I move my body, the things that I put in my body, the way that I care for my body. Right? It's like, I remember going to the chiropractor, and the woman who checked me in, I'm like, oh, just having some lower back. She's like, yeah, we're getting old. And I was like, no. I'm like, you may be getting old, but I just have something going on with my back that I've had for about 20 years and I'm needing to heal, right? Like, I'm not succumbing to that, right? Like, that's a belief, that's a shift. And it's not that I'm denying my age, like, at all. Like, it's not about that. It's just like what you were saying, like, how do we want to move into these ages, right? These days. And then to flip that, and I want to go back to what you just said at the end there, to the younger generation, who in some ways there is, well, first off, there are people talking about body image. And there is that infiltration of positive body image that I know we never got, right? That was not there. There was not fat positive, and there was not this experience of love your body and care, like there was no billboards, there was no Dove, advertisement with all these different bodies, and we have Target here in the United States with, different body types. It was that thin, twiggy experience. So there is that infiltration that is positive, but on the same side, there's social media. And I know that if I grew up in the age of social media, I would have been, I already felt like I had issues. I would have been screwed.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
the challenge of that, you're already, just think about when you were younger in those ages, and you just feel so uncomfortable in your body, and you feel like, right? And then all of a sudden you're going on social media and you seeing these photoshopped girls who showing the bright side of themselves, and like these, I can't even imagine. And we know that it's Photoshop. We know that it's a snippet of a moment in time, but for some reason we still think that they have it better than we do. And then they never wake up feeling uncomfortable in their body, and they never overeat, and they got their food all perfect, right? It's an interesting time to be in, for sure.
Just thinking about when we're talking about Photoshop, because I was coming into young womanhood, just behind the supermodel age. So, it was like Linda, Naomi, Cindy, all of that kind of stuff. So I'm quite tall anyway. Even then I was still not that, but it was still very static for the most part. Like I said, it was static. It was magazines, and then you'd catch them on TV or something like that. I can't imagine, like you said, I don't know if I'd have made it out if I'd have had social media during those times, because a lot of these girls I've spoken to, young people, they spend like 10 hours a day on TikTok. Like, how is that even possible? Like, it's like, and you're not watching anything for more than 30 seconds a minute. It's like, what information overload are you getting, like, when you're so disconnected from yourself? And like, isn't it any wonder that levels of anxiety are off the charts when you're just getting all of these bits of information, and some of it is like abject nonsense. Like, it is so far removed from reality or anything that's fair or right, and then keeping them in this state that just separates them from themselves, really, or doesn't even forge any connection. And it's a way of finding ourselves, to find that connection with ourselves. So we wake up and we'll go, oh, hang on a minute. I just spent like the first 50 years of my life beating myself up for no reason because I was all right. For me as well, that first year of my 50s was, all of that made sense. Like you were saying, it's like, I see why all of these things happen. So now let me just kind of pull them all together and then put it back out in the world, because it makes more sense than anything. And a lot of the time when you're going through it, you're like, just why? Like, why? This isn't fair. I'm trying all of these things, but it's brought together, the podcast started many years ago, and maybe even a lot of, I can see I didn't even realize what I had, of what it was that I was creating. I was just going with it because I felt that I enjoyed doing it, and I didn't fully see the purpose of what it was that I created. And it really, over the past 12 months, it's truly clarified itself to me, what I've been given and the purpose behind it, and why I had to go through all of these things. So now, which is why it's important for me to go, right, at this age is like, then I need to get my health together. Then I need to look at the coping mechanisms that I used to use that kind of work for a bit. They probably should have stopped working about the 30s, but I could keep, kept going. Just my thing was always like cakes and sweet stuff. So whenever I kind of felt a little bit off the side, it's like, okay, let's just go and soothe with this kind of thing. Whereas now that's not going to help me work into those later years in that way. And also ways that I used to come down on myself way too hard. One of the things that I'm doing when I'm writing my book is, obviously, I'm just going over my life to work out what goes in this book. One thing I realized that I used to do every now and again, so for about 20 years or so, I shaved my head. I kept it very low, pretty low. But there were instances within that where sometimes I weaponized it, because I'm quite tall as well. I'm like 6 foot. So I'm like 6 foot tall, a black woman with shaved head, and it created a distance that I was able to use that as and when I needed people to just pull back. And I can think of instances where I used that because I was hurt by something. Something would happen, someone would just overstep the mark. And because I wasn't necessarily confrontational, I wouldn't necessarily turn around and rage that way. The best way that I could protect myself was like, right, I'm going to go home and shave my head tonight, and see how I was using that as a way of doing it. And it's damaging myself to try and keep myself protected. So it's becoming cognizant of that and making sure that going forward that that's not something that I use. Like, I'm not doing anything damaging to myself to deal with the pain. I need to face whatever is uncomfortable, because by facing it actually doesn't hurt me as much as I thought it would. You think it's going to be the ruination of you, but it's like, but let it not be that. Let me just face what it is I'm feeling, and it moves through so much quicker as opposed to suppressing it and trying to tuck it away. And how did you start to work through your own reconnection with yourself, looking at habits that you had that weren't serving you long term, and turning that into what you're then helping other women through?
Well, I just want to say that is, I feel like what you shared as far as the awareness of how you were using your body. So, your hair, your as a way to protect yourself is such great awareness. Like that's what we're doing in this process, right? We're looking at how we're using food, how we're using our bodies, how we're using coping mechanisms to keep ourselves safe. And that's okay, right? Like, that was your way of dealing with it, and that was appropriate for the time. And now it's like, that doesn't work anymore, right? Like food for me, dieting, it doesn't work anymore. There's certain things that I'm working with right now that I'm becoming aware of. It's like, oh, I realize how I shut myself down. I go really small because the outside world is too much right now. Even if it's just like my son yelling in the house, right? It's just like, oh my God, I just need to like, right? And it's like my body tenses up and gets small, right? And it's that same sort of experience where, you mentioned earlier about the TikTok and how people are on it for so long that there is actually a disconnect from their bodies.
Yeah.
People aren't in their bodies. And so that the way that you get affirmation for being in their bodies is to maybe share a picture and then, oh, you like that. So now I can feel that in my body. So one of the things that I've had to learn in my healing is how to be in my body, how to be present in my body, because my body was not safe. My body was, if I cut myself off from listening to my physical cues, because my body would tell me that I was hungry, or it would tell me that I was full, or it would tell me to rest. And I didn't want to listen to any of those. I wanted to control. So I'm not supposed to be hungry right now. It's 10 a.m. and I'm not supposed to be hungry because it's not 12:30 when I said I was going to eat, right? And so now that not listening has now set, what is it doing now? It's setting my body up to now, when it is time to eat, now I'm overeating. And that was my cycle: restrict, restrict, binge. And I don't know, I'm sure you listeners are out there and you know exactly what I'm talking about. You may restrict and strict on a diet for a year and feel really good. And then you have that next 2 years where you're just at it, right? And it's, and then like you were saying, Carol, was like the experience of like, that doesn't work for me anymore, right? So it's a slow process. It's been a very slow journey of being like, am I safe here? Am I safe with this food? Am I safe to feel myself? Am I safe to feel pleasure? And I have to say that pleasure really was something that shifted my relationship with my body in a very, very dramatic way, because my relationship with my body was very about what I looked like. It wasn't about what I felt like. It was more that seeing yourself, like my relationship with myself was like I was looking in a mirror or looking at a picture. It wasn't this full-bodied experience. And I was someone who was always dancing and moving. I was always literally using my body, right? It wasn't that I wasn't somewhat in my body, but I wasn't feeling it. So it's when I began to heal my relationship with sensuality and sexuality and step into this sexual part of me, that I can just remember being like, oh my gosh, it doesn't matter what I look like. I feel right. And just like feeling that, and like that aliveness and that juiciness. And we've all seen that woman, right? That woman who's in it. She's in her, she's full. And she doesn't have the perfect body of the models and the this and the that, but her eyes are vibrant and she's juicy and yummy and voluptuous. And you don't even notice what her body looks like. You just feel her, right? And that's the experience I've had with like, oh, the breath, the connection, and through owning my sexuality and my sensuality and letting go of all the shame pieces around that and doing a lot of the healing of that. That's when more acceptance of my body came in, and also more pleasure with food and more safety with food. So it was safe to enjoy a big piece of chocolate cake, because before I wasn't really enjoying it. I was using it either as punishment, right? I was punishing my body by eating way too much, or I was in such guilt that, no, you're not supposed to do this. This is bad, right? So I was either in the rebel or I was in the good girl, right? And there's no pleasure in that, right? Sometimes there would be pleasure in the rebel, but then there would be the shame and the guilt right after that, right? So I think that the journey to positive body image and the journey of healing our relationship with food and our body really has to come from a place of pleasure and going through the growing pains of being in these bodies and getting to know them.
What you're saying also about just pleasure and being a sensual being as well, without it verging it into the shame of wanting to have that kind of sensual life and express yourself in that without the shame of feeling that you're too much, or the judgment of other women who are not experiencing that as well. That was something that came up in my mind as well, because if you are a woman who is, or a girl even, if you're one of the ones that are considered more attractive than others, that will come with a lot of stuff. That will come heavily loaded. That will come with attack and jealousy. And especially, I don't know if you experience this, I'm talking from my experience, especially if you're still figuring yourself out and you don't realize it at the time. Like, talking again from my own experience, is when you're not fully confident about yourself, you know, and your mind is full of all the stuff, and you're just not feeling as good as you look, that which is why you don't realize how good looking you are. And then on top of that, then you get the rage and the jealousy of other women that then kind of attack you. Then it kind of turns in on itself as well. These are things that I remember experiencing many a time. I used to do bits of modeling. I was like performing on stage, you know, so I always took care of my appearance, and I like to wear things a certain way. And I just didn't realize how triggering it was for so many, because like, even though I didn't feel as confident as I looked, it just highlighted the other women's inadequacy. And then they then kind of offloaded their inadequacy onto me. And then for someone who looked a certain way but didn't feel what I looked like, and then had this kind of attack from other women. But it wasn't until years later, a lot of the time, that it was pointed out to me, or I realized that they were jealous. But you were like, well, why though? I was going through, like, it was the worst time of my life. Why would anybody be so jealous? But it was because, you know, I could get into like a UK size 10 pink jumpsuit with like, you know, and wear a certain thing, and people noticed me when I walked in the room because I had this stature and this look. It was problematic. It would go both ways. Sometimes I would really kind of turn in, and then, you know, I was talking about things where I do the push away, would be like, okay, you've got, you know, like, if you want to see stuff, okay, I'm going to wear even bigger, even brighter, even bolder, bigger earrings, you know, to really just keep you at bay. If you want to have a problem with it, okay, then here's the problem on steroids. Let me show you the diva, you know, for more, and creating more space even. And it's it's one that it's always been difficult to kind of talk about, because talking about what it's like to be the person that everyone considers to be the most attractive person in the room, it's like, well, people are like, well, woohoo, you know, what a problem to have. But you're like, it is in this society, because women are pitted against each other so much, so that someone who just has that thing going for them, even when they don't even realize they've got that thing, or they haven't connected to that thing. You know, I didn't meet my her at the point, just to kind of open up to where her came from, was I did a music video for a song that I'd written, and I'd kind of pulled this whole project together. And even when I was shooting that music video, I really wasn't feeling like the person that I look like. And now when I look back at that video, I'm like, why couldn't you see what you would, you know, why couldn't you see what you created? Why couldn't you see how good you looked and everything about that? You know, and, you know, I was like wearing this red dress, and I was doing this, I looked good, but I just couldn't see it. And it wasn't until I watched the rushes back, and I was like, HER, and that's where it got born, because I actually saw something in myself that I couldn't see from the inside. I had to like witness it from the outside. And then that's kind of been the journey. And that was born 10 years ago from that video. Saying all of that to kind of bring it back to when you're trying to figure out yourself, you've been genetically formed a certain way, and yet it's problematic. How are you building that strength up within yourself without diminishing yourself? Because that would be one thing that I would do. And I you know, it's coming back to me of times that I did it where, you know, I always like to go to the gym. I was an athlete younger, so I just like the gym. I just like exercises. I like feeling in my body. But then when I kind of got to a point where I was like really kind of like hitting peaks, on a couple of occasions, I'd have that tap on the shoulders, like, you know, I don't think you you should slow down now. You don't need to do any more, like, or I think, some, like, that little voice would come in. And there was one time I remember where someone said that to me, and it impacted me that much that I went and bought like 5 donuts and went and stuffed them, sat in my car and just ate them start to finish, because I just didn't know how to handle it. And now looking back on it, I'm like, there was me trying to like pull myself down to get away from the tall poppy syndrome. And the reason all of these stories are fresh in my mind is because I'm just looking over my life right now. But that was another thing of other women being troubled by your brilliance, and
I have never had anyone share my story the way that you just did.
Oh, wow.
That is exactly the experience, almost to the T of what I've experienced, being someone who was confident in the pretty girl, and people liked me, and on theater, and an athlete, and not knowing, right, having that confidence, but not knowing how to deal with the jealousy.
Right.
I mean, I don't need to say it again, because you just told my story completely. And there's been this piece of me that just that part, that boo-woo, that's exactly, I'm like, when I finally it hit me, I'm like, okay, my story is that I'm the pretty girl, and oh, poor Marla, people liked you. They were jealous of you. You had a nice body. Oh, poor you. And I'm just like, you know what? I can't not tell this I can't not share. This has been my truth. And this is what has happened to me. And I had that same experience where it was like, I can remember, and it's almost like I can remember walking down the hallway in 8th grade and being like, you need to dumb yourself down. And I can remember saying to myself over and over again, no, you're just like everyone else. You can't control your food. You can't control your food. See, there is something wrong with you, because people would put me up on this pedestal. It's like, oh, Marla's perfect. She's so nice. She's so pretty. And it's just like, no, I'm not. No, there's something wrong with me too. I'm just like you. I can't control my food, and I'm crazy, right? It's like, and I would dumb myself down with making myself, and I would eat, and I can just remember feeling like, if I am really good, I'm going to hurt someone. I can remember friends being jealous or feeling sad about the things that I accomplished or what I looked like. And I'm like, I can't do that to them. I can't do that to them. And, and I've worked with other women who have had that experience where I'm like, oh, you're afraid of your own power.
Right.
And, and I just remember, it's like that. It's like where they're like, yes, I can feel how powerful I am, and I don't know what to do with it. Like, what if, and it's like the what if, and it's like that permission, right? And it's just like, we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. We're damned if we're the pretty girl, we're damned if we're everyone has a better story, right? And it's like, that's where the unifying force of being woman lives, is that we all have a body, and we all have a story, and we all have our not enoughs, and we all have, just the story of being human, right? And so I so resonate with all that you're saying, and I just feel so much. This is the part of me that just feels so much compassion for so many women who are going through so many things, of feeling that like, I'm not enough, or I am enough. And is that okay? Right? Is that going to hurt someone? Am I going to be told that it's wrong? And you know what? You may be. Like, I'm not, I don't think either one of us can say, I can't tell you that someone's not going to be jealous. And I can't tell you, but like, are we going to bond over our trauma and our pain? Or can we bond and hold each other up and encourage? It's like having that complete, like when you're talking about ritual and ceremony and celebration, it's like it's like turning that upside down. It's like, no, I'm allowed to share my story, and I'm allowed to share what that felt like. And you are too. Right. And, ooh, I'm just feeling a lot.
Yeah. And when you're speaking, it's like the thing that's coming back is the, especially thinking about the people who express their jealousy,
Yeah.
in many different ways, and now really understanding where they were coming from, and it was from their own feeling of lack of worth. They were comparing themselves to you. They were whatever it was. But it would always just come out the side and just be the unnecessary bitch, like ultimately that's what it was, because who else why would you then walk up to somebody and, like, I can think of a numerous of occasions where there would just be someone that would just come up and give me some advice, from one woman to another, which was was always meant to, and a lot of the time worked in just kind of chopping me down, because they could see me moving in one direction and they weren't moving in the direction that they felt, or they felt that my progress was highlighting their stagnancy, even though I wasn't doing it to build a gap between us. All I was doing was like, I've got something that I want to do with my life, and it requires me to do this, or these are the ways that I feel better about myself. I was an athlete when I was younger, so I always know what it feels like to be in a body that works and bounces and moves, so to then be in a body that's slower, or that's unusual to me as an athlete, or when I was an athlete. It wasn't about looks so much. Obviously it'd look a certain way when you're working with that, but you work on your body for your body to function and to move quickly and to jump higher and to do those things. It just really brought out a side in women to other women that, because of how lowly they were feeling about themselves, how disconnected they were with their own bodies, how whatever it was, but the only way that they could feel better about it was to come to you and just be like, okay, we
gotta bring it down.
Pull a few strips off. And because I wasn't strong enough at that time, like you said, my thing was like, or maybe I am standing too tall, like pull it all the way down, and just like, maybe everyone will like me a bit more if I just put on a bit more weight again, and then I'd be a bit more accepted, even though then I was not feeling, I wasn't feeling comfortable then, because in order to gain the weight, I was eating the worst food ever, which was never going to make you feel good. But it was just like, everyone felt comfortable if you just kind of, made yourself a little bit homely, made yourself a little bit more ordinary. But it's our own power. Is it the Marianne Williamson one that is the most frightening for us all, is to, like, when you get flashes of that awareness, again, for me, over this past year of really just overlooking everything that I've got and really appreciating the gift of seeing that her in all those years ago when I didn't even realize what it was. And then now seeing what it is for me now and where it can go in the future. It's like, I'm not letting this go. This is my time now. All of those years and all of those experiences have given me that. So it's for me to take it and run, and to bring it out into the world in a way that will incorporate all the things that I'm seeing it to be, and all the visions and all the things that I'm being told that I need to do to make it happen. And like you say, you cross the threshold where, things that you were like, oh, I can't say that, kind of go out before you're like, oh, that popped out, and now you're like, well, if anyone kind of looks back at you and go, you didn't, I'm like, I did, and I had to.
Unapologetically who we are.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, this is who I am. This is the body that I'm in. And this is me and my authenticity. And, I think what the pain of, having negative body image is the pain of trying to be someone that we're not. Right. And so it's really, it's really learning how to care for ourselves. Like, and begin to say, like, what does this body want to eat? How does this body want to move? How does this body want to be talked to? I have my book's coming out soon, and just finished my manuscript, done and done and done. So excited about it. And it's called Befriend Yourself, Finding Freedom with Food and Confidence in Your Body. And it's all about that journey of becoming our own best friend. So, those jealous people, or the people, even the parts inside of us that are trying to protect us and keep us down. Right. And it's like, it's getting to know them, getting to know these parts of ourselves, as you were saying earlier, about like that awareness of how you push people away. It's like not making any parts of ourselves wrong, but just leaning in with more compassion on how we can move through our lives, even with our coping mechanisms, and still just know that we're human, and that's okay. Like, and the great thing is when our coping mechanisms don't work, they start not to work anymore, right? The food doesn't work. The addiction stuff doesn't work anymore. Those are moments to be like, oh, that's so good. Yes, there's something else here for me.
That was a lovely conversation. We went in and out so many other things as well. Is there anything else you want to share as well? And also just kind of tell everyone where they can connect with you and learn more and work with you even?
Yeah. What I'd love to do is just offer all you listeners the opportunity for my free course, which is Breaking the Cycle of Emotional Eating. I know a lot of people who do suffer with their body image are also suffering with stress eating and emotional eating. So it's a free course, and it's about 6-7 modules. And we go deep into that. We go deep into the compassion and how to care for ourselves, and also how to, love these bodies more. So that's a great, entry point into my world. And of course, I would be really open to anyone if you have any questions or anything that's present for you right now that's come up from our conversation, anything that's alive in you, or any takeaways that you have from our conversation, to, email and just say, hey, I heard this, and this is what is alive in me, and, this is what I'm struggling with. And, start a conversation, because the more we connect as women, the more we allow our her to be felt, or she to be felt and seen, the more we can create this web, this weave of connection and care, and begin to really lift each other up.
Amazing, amazing. And where can we find you?
Oh, you can find me on loveyourbodyloveyourself.com. You can find me at Instagram, Love Your Body, Love Yourself Always. I have a Facebook group that if you wanted to join, if you go on there, you'll be able to find access to that, or I can give you the link, Carol May.
Yeah,
and sure. So that's a good places to find me.
Well, thank you so much, Marla, for coming on and the conversation as well, and just kind of veering us into things that people may not have thought about, especially from the stance of having to pull ourselves down and make ourselves feel smaller because we have something that for some reason isn't held, or we can't hold it. So I really appreciate your sharing today.
Thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Marla, for an amazing conversation, and thank you for listening. Again, want to promote the sister podcast, Higher Energetic Resonance Inspirations. The links to that series and the links to the mailing list are in the show notes below. And also, this message is for you if you know there is a greater purpose to your life and you're ready to turn it into a reality. My purpose, I realize, is here to help you make that happen. So if you're ready to take the next step in your transformation, and if you want to get there with support, accountability, and radical honesty, contact me to find out more about my Higher Energetic Resonance one-to-one spiritual life coaching program. My website is carolmaywhittick.com, carolmaywhittick.com. Find me on Facebook, Carol May Whittick, the same on LinkedIn, and Kazmic, Cazmick, on Instagram. Until the next episode, have an amazing week. Take care.